Wrestling legend Hulk Hogan has died at the age of 71.
What the hell is going on here? Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW. He is the third man. Look at this picture.
On the morning of July 24th, 2025, Clearwater, Florida, woke up to shocking news. Inside a quiet waterfront mansion, Hulk Hogan, the most recognized face in wrestling history, was found unresponsive in his private gym. His wife, Sky Daly, made the frantic 911 call, and paramedics rushed him to Morton Plant Hospital, where doctors pronounced him dead at 11:17 a.m. At first, reports were simple that cardiac arrest was the reason for his death. But when investigators arrived at the scene, they realized something about the story didn't add up. The gym looked untouched. The security system had been manually disabled, and there were no signs of a struggle. By noon, the property was sealed, and the FBI joined local detectives on site. Within hours, rumors spread across social media. A phone call, a hidden room, and a trail of secrets that would turn this heart attack into a federal investigation. What had really happened inside Hulk Hogan's mansion? All came to the fact that Hulk Hogan was trying to protect something in his final days. What was this?
I did it because I fell in love with professional wrestling.
The Warriors never seen nothing like this. And he is ignoring those big right hands by the Warrior.
When investigators first entered Hulk Hogan's mansion in Clearwater, Florida, the scene didn't match the picture of a natural death. The first place they examined was the home gym, the room Hogan called his sanctuary. It was where he spent hours lifting weights, meditating, and rebuilding his strength after decades in the ring. But that morning, the space looked eerily untouched. Every dumbbell was in place, every surface polished. There were no sweat towels, no half-empty water bottles, not even footprints on the mats. It didn't look like a gym used by a man who trained daily. The officers noticed the strange silence that filled the house. Even the usual hum of electronics was gone. When they checked the control panel for the home's high-end security system, they found something that stopped them cold. The entire network had been disabled manually from inside the property. Cameras were offline, motion sensors were deactivated, and backup systems were cut off at the source. It wasn't a technical glitch or a power outage. Someone with access and knowledge of the codes had chosen to shut everything down. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no smashed windows. Whoever moved through that mansion had done so freely and calmly. That detail forced local police to bring in federal investigators. Within hours, the FBI's cybercrime division began scanning every smart device in the house, the thermostats, lighting system, and security logs, searching for digital fingerprints. The data told a troubling story. All commands had been executed from a local user profile, meaning no outside hack had occurred. The system had been switched off from within the house by someone physically present. That single fact changed the direction of the entire investigation. If Hogan had done it himself, why would a man so protective of his privacy suddenly turn off the alarms that kept him safe? And if he didn't, then who else had the authority, access, and reason to enter undetected? 3 nights before Hulk Hogan was found lifeless in his Florida mansion, something happened that no one could fully explain. It began with a phone call that came late at night, long after the house had gone quiet. Sky Daly, Hogan's wife, later told investigators that she heard the phone ring once, then twice, before her husband picked it up. The conversation lasted less than a minute. She didn't hear the words, but she saw his face. The color drained from it. His usual calm expression turned into something close to fear. Hogan had faced pain, fame, and public scandal before, but Sky said she had never seen him look like that. He spoke softly, almost whispering, then hung up without saying another word. For several minutes, he sat still, staring at the wall. When Sky asked what had happened, he said only that it was nothing important, but his tone betrayed him. That night, he barely slept, and from that moment on, his behavior changed.
I probably wrestled too long, and I didn't get the memo that stuff was fake.
Investigators quickly confirmed that the call was not a random misdial. FBI cyber specialists traced its path through multiple encrypted networks and discovered that it had been rerouted through several international servers, masking its true origin. Normally, prank calls or spam messages are easy to track, but this one was hidden behind advanced layers of digital rerouting, often used by intelligence agencies or professional hackers. Whoever made the call didn't want to be found. The complexity of that system shocked even the FBI. Each trace they followed led to another dead end, another digital mirror. Analysts compared the routing pattern to methods used in cyber espionage. But why would anyone go to such lengths to contact a retired wrestler? The mystery deepened when investigators realized that Hogan's phone logs showed no saved number, no contact ID, and no record in his cloud backup. It was as if the call had been erased moments after it ended. In the days that followed, friends and family noticed a visible change in him. Hogan, once known for his booming laughter and larger-than-life personality, became withdrawn.
The new world order of wrestling, brother!
He canceled a planned podcast appearance, skipped meetings about his new bar business, and avoided calls from longtime friends. Even his gym sessions grew shorter. Sky told investigators that he seemed lost in thought, as if replaying something in his head. Speculation spread quickly. Some believed the call was linked to money, a threat or extortion attempt related to his businesses. But one theory unsettled investigators the most, that Hogan was being warned about something. There was no concrete evidence to prove it, but the timing was chilling. The call came exactly 72 hours before his death. And after that night, Hogan stopped using his phone entirely. He kept it powered off, tucked in a drawer beside his bed. When agents later recovered it, they discovered that the phone's encryption system had been altered. FBI forensics teams confirmed that this was not an automatic backup or a factory reset. For investigators, this call became the axis around which the entire case revolved. It represented a break from routine, a signal that something had shifted in Hogan's quiet final days. A man who had spent decades in the public eye suddenly seemed to be hiding from something unseen. Even now, the details of that phone call remain classified. Authorities have never released the number or the recording, if it exists at all. If a single call could shake a man like Hulk Hogan to his core, what truth could possibly be hiding behind it? And how could that one conversation be connected to the lifeless silence that followed only 3 days later? To understand the mystery surrounding Hulk Hogan's final days, investigators had to look beyond the walls of his mansion and into the fractured relationships that shaped his private life. Behind the public image of a wrestling icon was a man whose family life had been marked by rifts, lawsuits, and emotional distance. Hogan's first marriage to Linda Claridge had made them the picture of the perfect American family. Their reality TV show Hogan Knows Best showed him as a loving father, a husband balancing fame with domestic life. But off-camera, the tension was real. When infidelity rumors surfaced in 2007, the illusion collapsed. Linda filed for divorce, and the separation quickly turned bitter. The settlement left her with 70% of their liquid assets and a large portion of his companies. For Hogan, the divorce wasn't just financial ruin, it was emotional devastation. He later admitted in interviews that he had considered taking his own life during that time. The years that followed were a cycle of recovery and collapse. Hogan married again in 2010 to Jennifer McDaniel, hoping to rebuild his life in private. But by 2021, that marriage also ended quietly, with a confidential settlement that gave her property and a large lump sum. When Hogan married yoga instructor Sky Daly in 2023, he seemed determined to find peace. Friends described her as a grounding influence, someone who helped him focus on meditation, health, and a slower lifestyle. But one part of his past never healed: his relationship with his daughter, Brooke. Once inseparable, their bond had eroded over years of public scandals and private arguments. Brooke was absent from her father's wedding to Sky and rarely appeared in photos with him after 2021. In interviews, she spoke respectfully about him but hinted at walls that had grown between them. When investigators reviewed Hogan's will, they found a shocking detail. Brooke had been removed as a beneficiary in 2023, 2 years before his death. The entire estate, valued at around $5 million, was left to his son Nick. Was it a personal choice, or did someone influence him during his final months? Legal experts noted that inheritance disputes often trigger conflict after sudden deaths. The FBI didn't accuse anyone, but they took note of the timing. Hogan's will had been updated just months before his marriage to Sky, and again the following year. Each revision made his circle of trust smaller. Nick Hogan, now 35, was close to his father and frequently stayed at the mansion. He described his father's final months as peaceful, saying they spent time discussing business projects and new ventures. But others recalled subtle tension between the siblings. Brooke's exclusion from the will became a public topic after court filings revealed that she had asked to see the documents shortly before her father's death. Whether she suspected manipulation or just wanted clarity remains unknown. To complicate matters, Hogan's wealth wasn't limited to cash or property. He owned a beer company, Real American Beer, several business licenses, and over $200,000 in cryptocurrency. These assets, scattered across multiple LLCs, made his estate complex and vulnerable to dispute. Some of these companies had connections to older ventures involving former colleagues from his wrestling years, people who had since fallen out of contact. For investigators, this web of business and personal connections opened another possible angle. What if Hogan's death was tied not to his health, but to the people around his fortune? As the FBI pieced together his final interactions, they noticed something else. In the weeks before he died, Hogan had spoken to a financial advisor and requested that certain files be moved to a secure location. Days later, that advisor received no further instructions. Those files, labeled under his company's name, would later resurface in the hidden basement room discovered after his death. The tension between family, finances, and secrecy created a motive map that investigators couldn't ignore. Every decision Hogan made in his last 2 years seemed to narrow his circle of trust, cutting ties to people who once defined his life. Could the real cause of his death have been buried not in his relationships, but in his own body? 2 months before Hulk Hogan's death, doctors had performed a complicated spinal surgery that was supposed to give him relief from years of pain. Instead, it may have set off a chain of events that ended his life. The operation, known as an anterior cervical discectomy and fusion, was done in May 2025 at a Florida hospital. Surgeons removed several damaged discs from his neck and replaced them with bone grafts to stabilize his spine. It was a high-risk procedure, especially for a man in his 70s who had endured decades of physical strain. Hogan's career as a professional wrestler had left him with permanent injuries, torn muscles, fractured bones, and multiple back surgeries that had already pushed his body to the limit. At first, the surgery seemed to go well. Hogan appeared in photos smiling with fans, telling them he was feeling better than ever. But behind the optimism, doctors quietly warned that recovery would be unpredictable. They explained that the surgery had involved working near the phrenic nerve, a small but vital nerve that controls the diaphragm and allows a person to breathe. If that nerve were damaged, it could cause respiratory failure without warning. Soon after the procedure, rumors began to spread. A Florida radio host known for his shock commentary claimed that Hogan had slipped into a coma. Fans panicked, and social media exploded with fear that Hulkamania had finally come to an end. Sky quickly stepped forward to deny everything, posting online that Hogan was awake, strong, and recovering. Her calm words restored some confidence, but they also exposed how fragile his health had become. Medical specialists later told reporters that even minor complications from this type of surgery could appear suddenly, sometimes weeks after the operation. They noted that a small error, even a slight swelling or nerve irritation, could cause the heart or lungs to shut down within minutes. These comments gave new weight to the official cause of death: cardiac arrest. It could have been a natural result of his long medical history, or it could have been a silent consequence of the surgery. The FBI took this possibility seriously. They requested Hogan's medical records and consulted with independent experts to determine whether surgical malpractice could have played a role. According to one agent, the investigation had to separate medical truth from criminal chance. Meanwhile, Sky Daily hired her own attorneys to prepare a lawsuit, claiming that something about the procedure felt wrong from the start. She told friends that Hogan had complained of strange sensations in his chest and shortness of breath days before his death. Those symptoms might have gone unnoticed if not for his celebrity. Some believe that Hogan's weakened state made him vulnerable. The theory that the operation was linked to his death gained momentum when medical examiners reviewed his autopsy. Internal bruising around the diaphragm hinted at stress in the area where the phrenic nerve was located. While no conclusive evidence pointed to surgical negligence, the detail was enough to keep the investigation open. As the FBI continued to cross-check Hogan's hospital records with digital data from his home, they discovered something even more puzzling. Certain medical documents referenced in his files were missing entirely from the hospital database. The last person to access those records was Hogan himself, just days before he died. But if that was true, where had he hidden those files? And what could he have been trying to protect in the final days before everything went silent? When the FBI returned to Hulk Hogan's mansion for a second search, they were no longer looking for clues about a heart attack. They were looking for answers that could explain the silence, the missing files, and the unease that surrounded his final days. What they found beneath the house would change the direction of the entire investigation. The discovery began in the basement, a part of the property that had been renovated several times over the years. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, a storage area filled with gym equipment, old memorabilia, and unopened boxes. But when one agent tapped a section of the wall behind a row of shelves, the hollow sound caught his attention. Within hours, a small team used ground-penetrating scanners to confirm what they suspected. There was a hidden space behind the concrete panel. The agents carefully removed part of the wall and stepped into a narrow corridor that led to a small, windowless room. What they saw inside didn't match the rest of the mansion. The space was cold and minimal, illuminated by a single overhead light. Against one wall stood a steel filing cabinet and a long table with papers spread neatly across it. Nothing was out of place. Every document was labeled, dated, and stacked in perfect order, as if someone had been preparing them for storage. Most of the files contained financial records, medical reports, and copies of business contracts, but several folders were different. They contained handwritten notes and personal letters with timestamps that ended only a day before Hogan's death. There were also printouts of medical scans that did not match any known hospital record. Forensic analysts later confirmed that some of those scans had been printed on the same model of machine used in Hogan's surgery clinic. What alarmed investigators even more was that the room was not listed on any architectural plan of the property. Contractors who had worked on the house years earlier claimed they had no knowledge of such a space. The wiring, however, told a story of its own. Power to the secret room came from a separate circuit, one that could be turned on and off without affecting the rest of the house. That system explained how the security network could have been disabled without leaving a trace. Whoever built this room had planned for secrecy. Digital forensic teams found an encrypted flash drive inside a locked drawer. When they opened it using FBI decoding software, they discovered a collection of files with short, meaningless names. Most were empty, but one contained a list of accounts connected to shell companies registered in Florida, Nevada, and the Caribbean. The names on the documents were unfamiliar, but several were traced to individuals who had once worked in the wrestling industry. Some had been involved in lawsuits against Hogan years earlier. The revelation added another layer to the mystery. Was the hidden room a safe space for Hogan to protect sensitive information, or was it part of something he no longer controlled? Nick Hogan also denied knowing about it, though investigators later found his fingerprints on the door handle. Weeks later, reporters who had followed the case noticed something strange. Despite heavy public interest, no official statement about the contents of the room was ever released. It was as if the discovery had been quietly sealed away. For fans, it deepened the sense that the real story of Hulk Hogan's death had been buried, not just under the ground, but under layers of control and silence. If a hidden room could hold so many unanswered questions, what else might Hogan have known that never made it to light? And could those secrets have been the very reason someone wanted them buried forever? In the weeks after Hulk Hogan's death, the story shifted from shock to speculation. His fans mourned the loss of a cultural icon, but for investigators and those closest to him, the real story was just beginning. Every new discovery, the erased data, the secret room, the missing medical files, added to the weight of unanswered questions. According to relatives' statement, Hogan had expressed discomfort and trouble breathing in the days before he died. Something wasn't right, they told reporters. He trusted the doctors completely. The lawsuit was directed at the Florida Medical Center where his spinal surgery had taken place. If proven, it could expose one of the most serious cases of negligence involving a high-profile patient in recent memory. The agency declined to reveal what those files contained, but insiders hinted that they might be connected to offshore transactions made under shell companies. The details were vague, but the implication was clear. Someone close to Hogan might have been using his name and identity for financial purposes without his knowledge. Meanwhile, the question of inheritance resurfaced. Hogan's son Nick filed the necessary documents to claim the estate, estimated at around $5 million. The process seemed straightforward, but tensions grew when Brooke, his daughter, reportedly demanded a second review of the will. Her legal team requested a copy of her father's most recent signature to confirm authenticity. Although no public accusations were made, whispers of forgery began to circulate online. It was a painful echo of the fractured family Hogan had spent years trying to repair. Despite the growing noise around the investigation, Hogan's funeral was a private affair. The ceremony took place near Clearwater Beach, attended only by close friends, family, and a few former wrestling colleagues. Sky placed a gold cross on his coffin, the same one he had worn for decades inside the ring. For fans, the service symbolized the end of an era. the passing of a man who had defined American wrestling and inspired generations with his strength and charisma. But for those behind the investigation, it marked only a pause in the search for truth. Weeks later, the medical examiner released a final statement confirming that Hogan had died of cardiac arrest caused by a heart blockage. Still, the FBI refused to close their file. Their analysts continued to cross-check electronic logs from his home with hospital data. During that window, both the power and the cameras had gone offline, and no one could explain why. Sky Daily's lawsuit soon attracted national attention. Television panels debated whether her case was about justice or money. Some viewers sympathized, saying she was seeking accountability for a man who had given his life to entertainment. Others accused her of exploiting tragedy. Through it all, she remained quiet, saying only that she wanted the truth to come out. Nick and Brooke, meanwhile, appeared divided. Brooke gave a rare interview, admitting that her relationship with her father was complicated, but that she still loved him deeply. No matter what people say, she added, he was trying to make peace before the end. Her words struck a chord with fans who saw Hogan not just as a wrestler, but as a human being caught in the heavy shadow of fame. Yet one question refuses to fade. If the truth behind Hogan's death lies hidden in his mansion, will it ever be uncovered? And when it is, will it rewrite the image of the man the world thought it knew? The sudden passing of Hulk Hogan is not just the death of a legend, but a veil of mystery woven from intricate threads. Each clue paints a portrait of a man in his final days trying to protect something from the outside world. Although the official medical conclusion was cardiac arrest, a series of unusual events led investigators to believe that the death may have been the culmination of a larger conspiracy where fame, fortune, and deep secrets collided in a catastrophic way. The mysteries remain, but the image of Hulk Hogan, a symbol of resilience, passion, and the spirit of Hulkamania, lives on in the hearts of fans. The journey to find the truth after his death is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest adversity, people always yearn for transparency and justice.